Good evening, everyone. My name is David Borowski. I'm a 1991 graduate of the law school. I'm also a Milwaukee Circuit Court judge, and I'm proud to say that I'm currently the president of the Law Alumni Association. I would like to welcome all of you today to the Marquette Law School's annual Alumni Awards ceremony in the best law building in the country, Eckstein Hall. This is truly a special evening, and we are honored that you could join us at this gathering to recognize the wonderful, exemplary professionalism and service demonstrated by Marquette lawyers. The individuals being honored tonight have responded to the call to do more, not only in their legal careers, but also in their aspirations to do more for others. As many of you know, at Marquette we say, be the difference, and these winners are doing just that. They give meaning to the phrase, Marquette lawyer. As we listen to their stories, let us ask ourselves what more we can do as we consider our own careers and our own communities. Each year I attend this event, I'm inspired, and I'm sure I'll be inspired by the stories of our award winners tonight. Before we start formally, I would ask that everyone please have your cell phones off or on vibrate. I see everybody's following the rules, that's good. It's now my great honor and pleasure to welcome and introduce the 24th president of Marquette University, Dr. Michael Lovell. We are privileged to have him join us this evening to give us greetings. Please join me in welcoming him with a round of applause.
Well, first, thank you, David, and thanks for your leadership of our Law School's Alumni Board. I want to welcome you all here this evening in what I do believe is the best law school in the country, and to honor what makes Marquette great, and that is our graduates and the work that our graduates do in going out and changing the world. And we really, we charge our students when they leave here to be the difference. And I'm so proud of the work of the graduates of our law school. And this year, we actually honored the law school with what is known as a Difference Maker Award. So each January, I have the State of the University address, and I highlight people that have gone above and beyond the call of duty to really make a great impact in others' lives. And in case you missed it, we honored the Milwaukee Justice Center this year, and the work goes on. And it's really, for those of you who are not aware of it, it's a collaboration between our law school, the County Clerk of Courts, and the Milwaukee Bar Association. And it's amazing the work that they are doing here to improve the lives of the citizens of Milwaukee. And as we started to learn more, actually Joe took me to the Milwaukee Justice Center last summer. And I was really intrigued, first of all, by the fact that everyone that I met seemed to be Marquette law graduates. And just the number of people that were coming through the Justice Center. And I actually asked Joe, how many people does the Justice Center, meet and get to work with each year? And more than 10,000 residents of the city of Milwaukee gain access to life-changing legal services that they would not get. And so in January, I thought it really important to really recognize the work of the law school through the Milwaukee Justice Center. And the Associate Dean for Public Service, Angela Schultz, was one of the representatives which we actually gave the law school award to, along with many of our partners that came that day, including our student volunteers, those from the County Clerk of Courts, the Milwaukee Bar Association. So again, this is just one small way that our law school is making a difference, locally here, along with some of the great public policy work where we're making a great impact across the country as we discuss some of the most important issues facing our nation. Now, Our Alumni Awards, I'll be honest with you, it's one of my favorite times of year. And it's because I get to hear about the amazing work that our graduates are doing. And quite frankly, it's humbling for me because the work that our graduates do transform the lives of others in so many ways. And tonight, we're going to hear about 4 individuals who really reflect the mission of this university to live the life and service to others. Justice Ziegler demonstrates a life of service, one that started with the example set for her every day by her hardworking parents in the family hardware store. Professor Twersky's commitment to excellence made him the proper choice to be a special master assigned to the most complex mass tort case in the history of the United States, that of the 9/11 responders. At the Wisconsin Women's Health Foundation, Ms. Khalil expresses leadership through the creation of innovative programs that provide much-needed health education and direct services to women and families. And finally, Mr. Hayner's success for his work for the NCAA involves a very appropriate summary of Marquette's focus on faith. He says, trust God's plan. So to each of the honorees, I want to offer my sincere congratulations, and I want you to know that through your actions, you show us all how to be the difference. And I want to thank all of you for being here, and particularly I want to congratulate again, our award winners, and I hope that we all have a wonderful evening.
Dr. Lovels, thank you for your welcome and comments. Now I would ask you that you join me in welcoming one of the longest serving deans of any law school in the country, Joseph Kearney, Dean and Professor of Law at Marquette Law School. We're truly honored and fortunate to have him leading our law school. Dean Kearney.
Thank you, Judge Borowski. Good evening and welcome to everyone. Once a year, we gather on this occasion to celebrate the ideal of the Marquette lawyer. On such an occasion, our minds run necessarily to the past. In that regard, I must begin this evening on a sad note by relating the death just this past week of Professor Ray Klitsky. Many of you will recall Professor Klitsky, who joined our faculty in 1966 and served with distinction. His work here was varied indeed, beginning as director of a federally funded institute on poverty and the law. By the time Professor Klitsky retired 3 decades later, he had led the establishment of our program in intellectual property law. He remained involved in our moot court program, and we will recall him again a week from now when the Klitsky Prize for Oral Advocacy helps mark the conclusion of the Jenkins Honors Moot Court Competition, as it has for more than a decade. Services will be held this Friday in Brookfield. Please keep Ray and his family in your prayers and thoughts. We also have a recent tradition at this award ceremony of looking to the future. We are especially prompted to do this by the opportunity to present the Ralph J. Heuris Law School Citizen Award. This remembers a member of the class of 1941 and is underwritten by the Heuris Foundation, led by Ralph's law partner, Bill Farrell, class of 1968. The award provides scholarship support for the second year of study at Marquette for a student in the first-year class. We present it to someone who adds to the spirit of the law school, demonstrating a broad spectrum of qualities, including professionalism, a willingness to help fellow students, an involvement in the law school and broader community, and other indicia of the Marquette University mission. Drawing on nominations by first-year students, the selection committee has chosen Elena McGetrick. Elena, would you please come up here for a moment? Elena is an engaged law student, both academically and more generally. Her activities range from serving as a 1L representative on the still fairly new Organization for Student Wellbeing to pro bono work with Legal Action and the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics. I am pleased to congratulate and commend Alana, as well as the other finalists for the Harris Award, if they might stand, Richard Esparza and Tori Kasabucky, who will receive partial scholarships next year. Indeed, I wish to thank and acknowledge all of our students for what they are doing to help us build the Marquette Law School community and the future of the profession. You impress us. With those nods to the past and the future, let us turn squarely to focus on the present, the work and ongoing careers of 4 Marquette lawyers whom we honor this evening. We begin with the Charles W. Menkowski Sports Law Alumnus of the Year. No program at Marquette University Law School attracts students from across the country more than the sports law program. Aaron Hernandez was such a student. He came to us in 2010 from El Paso, Texas, by way of Notre Dame, where he had graduated with high honors. We sent him back to Indiana upon graduation, but as a Marquette lawyer, and to Indianapolis, as I shall describe. In his years as a student here, Aaron made the most of our possibilities, not only completing the sports law certificate, but serving as a research assistant to 2 of our professors writing in the field. It has been 6 years since he graduated, and yet sometimes I forget this, so frequent a presence is he here. Within the past week, for example, just last Friday, I almost bumped into Aaron on the 4th floor here. He was back in town, yet again, this time to talk to admitted students, individuals on the other end of the law school process, people considering in the first instance whether to join Marquette University Law School as students. That sort of effort is a significant contribution to the school. Yet it is Aaron's work at the NCAA in Indianapolis over the past 6 years to which we primarily point this evening. He focuses on enforcement in football development. On its face, that involves close attention to dense rules and regulations, and no doubt that is true. Nonetheless, like the law more generally, this activity is a human endeavor. When he is on the road, as he very often is, Aaron meets with sources of information. That is to say, he meets with people who, to put it in Aaron's terms, reach out to me for help. That help can be needed for a variety of reasons, he tells us. They are being harmed by a recruiter. Their son is being treated wrongly. Their family member has been physically harmed. This is difficult work, but gratifying. I never could have imagined, Aaron says, how many ways I could help people when I started this job. And helping these people keeps me motivated to conduct my business at the highest level every day. This is, of course, what lawyers do most basically. They help people. Sometimes it is to solve problems. Other times, more affirmatively, it is to help realize opportunities. The latter is certainly what Aaron does so often with Marquette law students. For a particular example, along with Professor Paul Anderson, Aaron has created an extensive internship program with the NCAA in which Marquette law students take, well, a disproportionate part. Aaron is a dispassionate professional. He equally is an unapologetic partisan for his successor as Marquette law students. Such alumni loyalty makes a significant difference to the law school. Aaron, would you please come to the center of the stage while I finish? Aaron, Charles W. Menkowski took great pride in the sports law program, the geographic and other diversity that it fostered for his alma mater, and he was a great supporter of it. Your work at the NCAA is a leading example of what the Marquette lawyer can do to advance the appropriate interests of student athletes and their families in the arena of college sports. And I admire the energy and professionalism that you bring to it. and, to be sure, your continuing connection and service to Marquette University Law School. We present to you the Charles W. Menkowski Sports Law Alumnus of the Year Award.
Wow, those are really nice words. Can you believe that they only gave me 1 minute? They said, you got 1 minute. I don't think I've ever wrapped up a thought in my life in 1 minute, and they say you get 1 minute, but I'm going to listen to you, Christine, and only go 1 minute. So I've got a wonderful group of people right here up in front, and I just want to thank you all so much for coming. Bobby Ullman, Adam DiGiulio, Lizzie and Ryan Payne. There's a bunch of Marquette alums here, by the way. Donnie and Katie Jankowski, who this is a big honor, but the biggest honor of my life was I got to marry them. They asked me to marry them. Jake Augustine, my mother, Yvette Hernandez, she came all the way from El Paso, Texas, and she is celebrating her 3rd year of remission from breast cancer. Also, in the mafia we got going on right here, we got Paul Anderson. Thank you so much for your leadership, Professor Anderson. Veda Lindsay, all the work that you've done in the recent years for the Sports Law Institute. And Professor Matt Minton, thank you for your leadership as well. Christine and Dean Kearney, thank you so much for putting this wonderful event on. We have absolutely, bar none, the best sports law institute, not in the country, but in the world, and I will always continue to be a very, very partisan Marquette lawyer. Thank you all so much for coming, and we are Marquette.
Thank you, Aaron. We present the Howard B. Eisenberg Service Award this year to Lizette Khalil. This award remembers my great predecessor, whose service to the larger society and the profession would be legendary, except for the fact that it actually happened, even within the memory of many of us. Dean Eisenberg died in 2002. Lizette had not yet joined us then. She was in the first group of entering students whom I helped recruit as dean. But we may nonetheless regard her as an alum of the old sort. By this, with apologies to Mr. Hernandez, I mean primarily that she spent all of her time with us in Sensenbrenner Hall. I would add that the Marquette Law School tradition of service well antedates Dean Eisenberg and is not associated exclusively with any era of the law school. It is a timeless aspect of our mission. Lizette's professional activity comes not in the courtroom or so much in the legal profession per se, as it does in the larger civil society, in the world of nonprofit leadership. She serves as operations director of the Wisconsin Women's Health Foundation in Madison. Her work involves helping create innovative programs to provide health education and direct services to women and families across the state. The description sometimes sounds rather general or high level. Lizette frequently is asked to sit on steering committees and planning groups that shape state health goals and public health initiatives. In this, we will not doubt that her pre-law school background, which includes a master's degree in public health, helps her see the big picture. Yet Lizette is a lawyer, so it will not surprise you that her work is attentive to, or more accurately, grounded in, the particulars or the details. Competition for funding in the health sector insists on evidence-based practices. To be successful, this requires someone who will patiently sift through and compile the evidence. Yet the lawyer's activity involves not just such patience and care. It entails art in presenting the evidence. Lizette attributes much of her affinity for grant writing to her law school education, more specifically to her first-year legal writing classes. The ability to write concise, persuasive arguments which are responsive to specific questions, has been a central component of her success in a highly competitive sphere. In all of this, Lizette is, in the words of one of her nominators, thoughtful, strategic, creative, and driven. Her skills include the ability to quickly process information, summarize facts, and lead conversations. This last aspect of her activity speaks to the emotional intelligence, as it is sometimes called, upon which Lizette draws in her work. One of her nominators pointed not just to the talented colleagues whom Lizette has hired, but to her support of them, resulting in low turnover and, more substantively, better reporting and data analysis for the Foundation's funders and improved opportunities with its partners. Some of her previous positions have helped Lizette develop these abilities, including her engagement while in law school addressing family violence as a specialist at Catholic Charities Child and Family Ministries, and her service here in Milwaukee for 2 years upon graduation as Executive Director of Centro Legal por Derechos Humanos. There is more to Lizette than her professional engagement. I pass over most of this because of the nature of the award, but I will relate that she describes herself as, quote, climbing a fairly steep learning curve as my family and I enter the world of youth wrestling. I imagine that good legal writing carries you only so far in that particular world. Lizette, would you please come forward? Lizette, your work for the Wisconsin Women's Health Foundation, your leadership in the increasingly important world of nonprofit organizations has distinguished you, even as it has symbolized for us the extraordinary service skills and opportunities available to lawyers, and recalled to our minds the contributions of my extraordinary predecessor as dean. On behalf of the Law Alumni Association, it is a privilege to ask you to accept the Howard B. Eisenberg Service Award.
Thank you so much. Being recognized for service work in any capacity would be a true honor, but being recognized by Marquette is especially meaningful. I've always appreciated how Marquette and the Jesuit tradition is able to interconnect faith and service, and that's what made me feel welcome here when I was a student. Also what makes this very meaningful, but also overwhelming. I need to thank my fantastic colleagues and friends and mentors who took the time to be here today. I think we all know none of us works in a vacuum, and any impact that I've been able to have is directly related to the incredible caliber of people who've been surrounding me, both professionally and personally, for the last 20 years, so thank you. And then last, I need to thank my family. Some of you may know that I get to live in a house with 3 awesome guys. My husband, John, is here. Our oldest son, Jack, is here. Our youngest, Charlie, wanted to come, but he's 5, and Jack wisely advised that this is not something a Charlie can handle. That was right. But all 3 of them, even Charlie, have been incredibly supportive and understanding and genuinely helpful. So I couldn't do this work if they weren't on my team. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Aaron Tversky calls Brooklyn, New York, his home. This is reasonable enough. He has taught in the New York area for decades, primarily at Brooklyn Law School for more than 30 years, where he serves today as the Irwin and Jill Cohen Professor of Law. And he spent more than a decade and a half on the faculty of the nearby Hofstra University School of Law, leastwise if one includes his tenure as dean of that law school, as none should contest. At the same time, and for an admitted bit of conjecture, I believe that Professor Tversky considers Milwaukee to be his home as well. Marquette University Law School must be part of the reason for this. A member of our class of 1965, he thrived as a student here. Indeed, it was here that he determined, early on, as I understand, that to be a law professor was his future. This he accomplished with remarkable alacrity. Upon graduation, and after a year in Washington, D.C., as a trial attorney in the honors program of the United States Department of Justice, and 1 year as a teaching fellow at Harvard Law School, he was Professor Twersky by 1967. This was at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, where he served for 4 years before there began the almost half century at the New York City area law schools that I have mentioned. To be sure, the Marquette University law degree is not the only reason that we here in Milwaukee feel such pride in Professor Twersky. He is a native Milwaukeean. It is here that his father Jacob was, and his brother Mikkel is, the rabbi of the Beth Yehuda congregation. May I say what a privilege I considered it to be in Rabbi Twersky's home in Sherman Park a year ago with my colleague Alan Borsick to make the request of Professor Twersky that he accept this award from the law school. I am tempted to say that I refer to him as Professor Twersky rather than Rabbi Twersky, not because the latter title would be inaccurate, but to distinguish him from his twin brother and all the various other Rabbi Twerskys, past, present, and, I expect, future. The problem with such a statement would include that to say Professor Twersky itself is an incomplete distinction. For what would we then call, just to give another example, another brother, Abraham Twersky, also a rabbi and also a Marquette University graduate who was a longtime faculty member in psychiatry at the University of Pittsburgh. But let's clear all that aside. New York City, Pittsburgh, Cambridge, Washington, D.C., and Milwaukee. For Professor Twersky's primary home, for our purposes, is the law school classroom and the legal academy, and not just the particular school at which he happens to be teaching. This man is a giant in that most important realm, the law of torts. His articles examining, probing, dissecting, and assessing tort doctrines have appeared in the law reviews at Columbia, Cornell, Georgetown, Hastings, Marquette, Michigan, NYU, USC, Vanderbilt, Washington University, and Yale. Arbitrarily to limit myself to a dozen, which in this instance I could multiply more than sixfold, and carefully to list them in alphabetical order, although it is a nice thing that Yale comes last. These various academic articles, together with a number of books, are a lifetime's work, I would say, for most people. But I do not believe that they even rank as Professor Twersky's primary contribution to the legal academy and profession. For he also served as co-reporter, along with Professor James Henderson of Cornell University, of the Restatement Third of Torts, Products Liability. The restatements, initiatives, of course, of the American Law Institute, are monumental projects, requiring of the reporters immense scholarship and not much less political skill, as much as its predecessors. Indeed, even more so perhaps, given the increased fragmentation and divisions in views of substantive law in recent decades, as in so many other spheres of life, the third restatement of torts is a towering accomplishment. I expect that this affords some window into the estimation and repute in which the legal academy and profession hold Professor Twersky. Quite apart from my having adduced evidence to support the characterization, you may see it supported in the judgments of others. In 2016, the Association of American Law Schools presented Professor Twersky with the William L. Prosser Award, which recognizes outstanding contributions in scholarship, teaching, and service in the area of torts and compensation systems. Just as in 2009, the American Bar Association had honored him with the Robert B. McKay Award, which recognizes a law professor in the fields of tort and insurance law who is committed to the advancement of justice, scholarship, in the legal profession. Nor should there be any misimpression that his expertise is simply academic. To give only a leading example, Professor Twersky was appointed as a special master in the federal 911 cases concerning the injuries suffered by those involved in the cleanup of the World Trade Center site after the attack on the United States. There is a host of civic and other activities in the service of communities of which he is part as well. Time and my focus here on the legal profession constrain my recounting them. Suffice it to say that they are as extensive and impressive as you would expect of someone with Professor Twersky's intellect and humanity. Professor Twersky, would you please come to the center of the stage? Professor Twersky, for a lifetime of teaching, scholarship, and service in the law, and, if I may, for your unsurpassed representation of the Marquette University mission of excellence, faith, leadership, and service, it is a great and humbling privilege for me to ask you to please accept the Law School's Lifetime Achievement Award.
Christine, it's going to take more than 1 minute. I owe a whole lot to Marquette Law School. Not only was I mentored by two giants in the profession, Jim Giardi and Ray J. Aiken, but I have a story to tell. When I graduated law school, someone who looked like me was not going to get hired. Marquette stood behind me. And then when I was at the Department of Justice, I received a call from Harvard Law School asking me to come for an interview to the Teaching Fellow program. How did that happen? An adjunct professor at Marquette, Bill Kiernan, who's no longer alive, taught conflicts. And sitting in the class, it was the time when Babcock versus Jackson was decided and it was the rage. And I sat there in the front row and shook my head once and twice and throughout the semester. And he would say, Twersky, what's wrong? And I would tell him. He reminded me of a great Talmud teacher that I had, Rabbi Sachs in Chicago. When I was a youngster, and I would ask a question, and he would say, and I'd ask a good question in Talmud, and he would say, Tversky, you're 100% right, but I'll show you where you're wrong. And that's what he did with me. And unbeknownst to me, he wrote to Harvard saying, you ought to look into this fellow. And that was the start of my teaching career, and I would not have been able to make it into the teaching career if not for what Bill Kiernan had done without even telling me that he was doing it. So I am indebted to Marquette Law School in a way which I cannot even begin to express. I have lots of family here, and my brother's community, Rabbi Twersky's community, here, and I'm grateful for them showing their support. Marquette Law School is a great place.
Thank you, Professor Twersky. We conclude, as is our custom, with the Alumnus or Alumna of the Year Award, and we present it to the Honorable Annette Kingsland Ziegler of our class of 1989. This honoree arrived to law school and the legal profession largely without direct examples. In particular, there were no lawyers in her family. At the same time, she brought parts of her upbringing to the endeavor. Among other things, a job in the hardware store that her parents owned outside Grand Rapids, Michigan, gave her both considerable experience in working with people and an appreciation of the value of hard work. Perhaps reflecting both of these things, when Annette Kingsland attended nearby Hope College in Holland, Michigan, her primary areas of study were psychology and business administration. Here we come to a demonstration of how a great university such as Marquette can enrich a state in a lasting way. Upon applying to law schools, Justice Ziegler, as we may as well begin referring to her here, for I trust it to be no spoiler to say that the conclusion of this story will find her on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Justice Ziegler visited Marquette University in Milwaukee for the first time. She felt an immediate connection, I have heard her say on a number of occasions. Without suggesting that all of the initial glow remained constant during the ensuing 3 years of law study, she was proved correct in her assessment of the fit between herself and Marquette. Asked in connection with this award to identify a faculty member who had a positive effect on you, Justice Ziegler says, there were so many. One example is no longer with us, Professor Jim Giardi. Two others are retired, Professor Jack Kircher, whose Socratic method she recalls, and Professor Christine Wiseman, of whom the justice says, the room would resonate with her intense love of the law and pursuit of justice. Others are very much part of the law school today, 30 years on. Quote, Professors Hammer and Blinka, we are told, have an ability to make the law come to life. Of course, it is what Annette Ziegler has done with the Marquette Law degree that prompts tonight's recognition. She appreciated the opportunity in private practice, where she spent several years before beginning a career, truly, in public service. This began with her work as a prosecutor, first as a special prosecutor for the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office, and then as an assistant United States attorney. Governor Tommy Thompson appointed her to the Washington County Circuit Court in 1997, whereupon she was duly elected and re-elected. She was then elected to an open seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court in 2007 in a contested race. For a striking fact, indeed, one without any analog during her now 12 years on the court, which have brought 8 other elections, her 2017 statewide re-election campaign was uncontested. That is powerful testimony about the estimation of Justice Ziegler within the legal community and the state of Wisconsin more generally. During this time, the dozen or so years that have constituted some 2/5 of her time in the profession since graduation from law school, there has been extensive professional engagement, of course. In particular, Justice Ziegler has authored scores of opinions setting forth the law of Wisconsin on topics ranging from lower profile ones, insurance, or even uninsured motorist law, for example, to matters such as criminal or constitutional law more likely to find their way into the newspapers. You could look it up, as the familiar saying goes, even if the usual allusion is not to the Wisconsin reports. I want to mention some things that you cannot look up in the law books. Some of it is civic service of a less prominent sort than tenure on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. In Justice Ziegler's case, this may be, depending on the moment, continuing education programs for lawyers or other judges, for an example that one of her colleagues on the court particularly cited in a nomination letter. Or it may involve service outside the legal profession, especially in her adoptive Washington County. Or it may be her exceptional support in a variety of forms of Marquette University Law School. Permit me to note that tonight's gathering, not just the award winners, but the entire group of you, consists of anomalies. Happily so, but anomalies all the same. There is no requirement that anyone remain involved with his or her law school years after graduation. We are so grateful that you do. Yet whether it is service on the Law School Advisory Board or frequent visits here to Eckstein Hall and previously Sensenbrenner, or whether it is much less public ways, such as moot court programs and various other activities, some of them in support of the law school generally, others of them in support of my efforts as dean. In all of these, Annette Ziegler does not merely, through her words, espouse, but through her actions demonstrates the importance that she places on our work. I speak for the Marquette Law School community when I say how grateful we are for that. There is an especially consistent theme here. It is reflected in one of Justice Ziegler's favorite quotes. I know this because I have heard her share it with our new graduates at the annual swearing-in ceremonies. It is sometimes attributed to Thomas Edison. Opportunity is missed by most people because it is dressed in overalls and looks like work. I know from both objective and inside sources, including Marquette lawyers who have served as her law clerks, just how hard Justice Ziegler works to serve the people of Wisconsin. Of course, if your baseline is experience in a job under the watchful eye of your parents in the store that was their livelihood, that explains a lot. Justice Ziegler, would you please come to the center of the stage? Let me begin my brief closing by relying on your sense of good humor, with which I am familiar, and to which more than one of your nominators spoke. I apologize to you for any role that Marquette University Law School had in causing you to abandon, or at any rate, not yet to realize your childhood ambition, becoming a meteorologist, as I understand it. Yet we say with confidence that this has been the legal profession's and the law's gain. Please know how much we at Marquette University Law School admire you, how grateful we are for your contributions to the work of the law school, and how much we hope for your continued engagement in the law and in the future of the institution. In all events, we ask you to accept this award as our Alumna of the Year.
This too might take more than a minute. Actually, we weren't told a minute, so you're gonna have to bear with me a little bit. I really am deeply honored and humbled to be here on the stage with these other award recipients. Really, it's an honor to be with you. And those people who in the past have received these awards, it's amazing. And if you think about it, a girl who grew up sweeping the floors in her parents' hardware store sitting here at Marquette on the stage getting this award, I find that frankly amazing. So as I see it, this award really doesn't belong to me as much as it does to the people who've influenced me and my parents in no small measure. They did teach me the meaning of a hard day's work, an honest day's work, trust, honesty, ethics, integrity. I grew up in a faithful household where, you know, you had to do the right thing. And I owe them a lot for that. With respect to my parents, I do attribute that very quote to them on a regular basis, even though it's Thomas Edison's quote. No wonder then Marquette was a perfect fit for me when I came over here with my father a number of years ago, and a law student took me around. It was a different place, not this beautiful place, and just kind of showed us around, a lot like Alejandro Gonzalez did tonight when he just dropped what he was doing to take some friends and I around upstairs. It's that Marquette thing, Alejandro, that counts, right? And he's here all the way from Nogales. My parents would love to be here. I know they would. They've been married 68 years. Dad passed away last year around Christmas time, and Mom can't travel the way she used to, but I know they're here in spirit, and they would love to be here. On a lighter note, I came across this Saturday Night Live Father Guido Sarducci skit the other day, and I just have to, just for a second, talk to you about it because I found it frankly hilarious. He was forwarding what he called a 5-minute education, and his thought was 5 years after graduation. Some of you know what I'm talking about even. Some of you have no idea, but you'll look it up. Anyway, 5 years after graduation, most people retain very little from what they've learned. Like in Spanish, he would say you learn, ¿Cómo estás? Estoy bien, gracias, ¿y tú? That's like it after a couple years. Or business, you earn buy it for less, sell it for more. Economics, supply, demand. He says he can teach all these things you learn in college and retain 5 years later in 5 minutes. He says, of course, one of the downsides is spring break is exceedingly short. You get a glass of orange juice and a sun lamp for about 2 seconds, and then you go back to class. So at the end of his skit, though, he says, you know, I'm actually thinking about starting a 1-minute law school. And I thought to myself, you know, that might be kind of the case for a lot of lawyers from a lot of law schools 5 years out. They don't have a lot of tools in the toolbox, not a lot of memories, but that's not the way it is for a Marquette lawyer. We learn a lot more. We learn about serving our community. We learn about service above ourself. You know, there's this phrase, experiential learning, that's real popular now, but Marquette's been doing experiential learning since pretty much the beginning of time, I think, with its legal clinics and the teachers and the professors and the way they do things. It's nothing new for Marquette. And a Marquette lawyer leaves here with not just a profession. Really, a Marquette lawyer, I think, leaves here with a calling to serve. I think back on many of the friends that I saw here tonight that I haven't seen in a long time, and 30 years goes by fast. We have our reunion this year, so this is a call to each and every one of you, Christine, you can thank me later, to come to the reunion this year, because I know we're going to have a great time. But those are lifelong, lasting relationships that have developed, and I don't know that that happens for everyone everywhere they go to law school. I recall you mentioned Professor Kircher at the beginning of my very first year, and Leslie, you might remember this. Oh my gosh, it was one of the first Marquette things that they had, and so the young 1Ls and the professors were in the same environment and talking and whatnot. Professor Kircher and I began a discussion/debate about the merits of the Socratic method and why he deemed that necessary to put his students so on the spot in this hot environment. And anyway, he concluded with, why don't you just come see me on Monday morning in my office? And I think it was Leslie and I that were like, oh my gosh, Annette, what did you do now? Anyway, that turned out to be a game changer. He officed in an area with Professor Williams and Professor Wiseman, who came to be close friends, and I have the highest regard for them. All of the professors at Marquette were really great. Professor Blinka, Professor Wiseman, McChrystal. I think Professor Rofus, I said, your first year of teaching was our last year here. That's kind of hard to believe, isn't it? So many great professors. I saw Professor Edwards upstairs earlier tonight. It's really amazing to see these professors and think of them as friends and colleagues and people that don't just leave you at the door when you graduate. So this award really is nothing that I've singularly done. I really think it's a lot more about the people out there, the people in our class, the professors that taught us, the great lawyers that I've worked with, the judges that I served on the trial bench with for a decade, and my colleagues now. We have Chief Justice Rogensack, who's here. Justice Kelly is here. Justice Dallett is here, our Director of State Courts, my Judicial Assistant Sue, and my previous Judicial Assistant Mary, and a number of whom are Marquette grads, but law clerks of mine that are kind of peppered throughout here. It's really great that you took the time to come here today. So finally, I would say, as others have said, you know, awards are really nice, and having an important job is really great. It's really interesting, but the most important thing is family. Lauren Grant came today, Lauren Grant Summer, Laura who worked for Marquette for a while, but my husband is here, JJ, and I couldn't do any of this without you, honey. I just couldn't. That's all there is to it. You know, it's one thing to have a good, supportive, kind family, but Some days the robe is really heavy. And when you come home to a good family and you can check it at the door, it makes everything better. Charlie and Drew, who I know would love to be here, our two sons. They're in South Carolina concluding sophomore year of college and senior year of college, so they're busy at end of year projects. But they too have Marquette to thank, because when I went to Marquette, I thought, I can't just hang out with lawyers all the time, I might go crazy. And so I went down to the lakefront, started playing tennis, met my doubles partner, who happened to be JJ's cousin. And so without that outreach and meeting Nancy, I went and met JJ, hence you can see how Charlie and Drew have Marquette to thank, right? Keller, my stepdaughter, is in Arizona. She is running a small business on her own and raising 3 children as a single mom. All 3 kids are under age 10. So as you can tell, she might have her hands full, and we might have something in common with your brother, Charlie, I think, if we had that circumstance here today. Finally, JJ's parents, Bernie and Peg Ziegler, have been amazingly supportive over the years. I don't think a person could ask for better in-laws than my in-laws. Every single time I wanted to do something like become the first female judge in Washington County or run for the Supreme Court, they were, all right, we're right behind you, and they got right on board. And they really are very amazing people. For those of you who know them, you would know that they would say, you know, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. That's the truth. This award is due to all of you more than me, so I hope you take a piece of it with you today, and I'd love to share it with you. And again, thank you. But I'm going to close with one quote that Joe didn't mention, and that's from Maya Angelou. It's one of my favorites, and I think it's true. So take it away and think about it as you engage with other people in your lives every day. She would say, people may forget what you said, people may forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And you make me feel really great today. So thanks for taking your precious time to be here.
Congratulations once again to our outstanding award winners this year. I'd ask that you join me in one last round of applause for all of our recipients. We'd like to thank all of you for coming tonight to help us honor these outstanding Marquette lawyers. This is the conclusion of our program. We would encourage you to stay, mingle, talk, and enjoy another appetizer. Have a good night and a good rest of the week.